Welcome back to Uncharted, your sidekick for life, the podcast where we have the privilege of exploring the minds and experiences of extraordinary individuals who are shaping our world. I'm Natalie Peyton, and unfortunately I was away for this episode, which I am super bummed about because it's chef's kiss. But Dan Dillard and Dr. Vanstone, your other two favorite hosts, are here and in the studio with our special guest, Dr. Alton Barron. Dr. Barron is an esteemed orthopedic surgeon and passionate advocate for musicians' health. He brings a wealth of knowledge and a unique perspective on mentorship, education, and the intersection of medicine and the arts. Because our guest mentor this episode, Dr. Barron, is a former engineer turned surgeon, we sought out Gen Z students who are studying engineering and medicine. Special thanks to our Gen Z contributors, and Anais Schmidt, who spoke with returning Gen Z guest and A&M student Kiera. Kiera asked, if you ever lose your path, how do you find your footing? I chatted with other Gen Z contributors on UT campus, which included Don, who asked how AI will affect him personally, Drew, who wanted to know what he should be learning outside of his software engineering degree, and last but not least, Juju and Gabby. Juju, as a graduate in the social services field, doesn't worry about how AI will affect her. And Gabby, as a pre-med student with hopes of working in pediatrics, candidly expressed why she doesn't worry about AI taking over her future dream job. I'm so excited for you to hear this episode. So, without further ado, let's get started.
I am so excited for episode 4 of Uncharted. Natalie, unfortunately, is not with us today. She's traveling, but we'll be back for the next time.
Her.
Yeah.
Enjoying herself.
I am Dan Dillard, co-founder of Founding Up, and we've got...
I am Dr. Leon Vanstone, also co-founder of Founding Up.
And we've got a friend and a guest here, Dr. Alton Barron. You want to tell them a little bit about what you are up to?
Well, sure. I'm not a founder of Founding Up, but I'm happy to be here nonetheless.
Yeah.
And I thank you, first of all, for having me, and I can't wait for our discussion with you guys. I hope I'm here because I have a keen interest in young people. I've been involved in the educational system in my medical career, which has been going on for quite some time now as I get longer and longer in the tooth. But I'm also involved at a administrative level, if you will, with post-university as the chairman of the board of trustees for this very expanding university, which we can talk about. I'm also heavily involved in the University of Texas at Austin, where I went to undergrad in engineering and then segued on to medical school at Tulane in New Orleans. And then I am now a full-fledged board-certified orthopedic surgeon specializing in shoulder, elbow, and hand surgery in New York and in Austin. And the only other significant thing, I believe, is my deep involvement with music as a founder and director of the Musician Treatment Foundation, which is a nonprofit that helps under and uninsured professional musicians with their orthopedic maladies in their upper limb, which fits with our motto of keep the music playing.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Well, thanks for being here. As you know, the whole premise of the podcast is mentorship. Mentorship is what I found through previous careers to be kind of a game changer. I'll let you see. There's this structure that we all go through, the education and but from that point forward, mentorship is really, really important to kind of see the world differently. And so wanted to get you on the podcast because of this varied skills and experiences that you've had can open up some good mentorship ideas for some of the kids that we've been out talking to.
That's great.
So what we'll do, the format is we'll just look at some of the videos. We've have one of our guest hosts. Actually, we have 2 guest hosts that went out and did some talking to some of the Gen Z.
Some outside exploring.
So we had Anais go out and talk to some, and then actually Natalie went out and talked to some. You went out as well.
The University of Texas. So some local students.
Nice.
So let's get started with this first video and see to see what kind of advice is needed here.
if you were right now in a room with someone that you look up to, and what would you ask them that you're struggling with right now?
This is a super good question because I do have like mentors out in like the field that I'm sometimes like, oh, do I ask this question? No, it's okay. I'll keep it to myself. But I think it was, I think this kind of goes back to my life question. I think it was during your during your college, did you ever feel like you lost your path towards what you wanted? And then kind of what helped you stay motivated and passionate towards it? Because I never want to lose my motivation, and I just want to know how other people dealt with it, and then how they necessarily found their footing in life and knew that that was their path.
So, Kiera, obviously, great question.
Yeah.
She's in college now, and has some concerns about losing your path. Leon, thoughts?
I mean, I have those concerns now. Who do I want to be when I grow up? Yeah, I mean, I look at even my career, which is not as storied as both of you, but it's like, okay, so first I wanted to be an aerospace engineer, and then I grew to hate that at university, so I decided I was going to go work in the city in London, and that for a Big Four consultancy firm, and I failed horrendously at that. I lasted 11 months before I resigned. Then I thought I wanted to be an academic or something, and I lasted that for a while, and then kind of came out of that. So currently I'm on failure number 3 or 4, I think, in terms of like careers that I pursued. And as I eventually realized I have this like 5-year life plan, and the rule is never plan more than 5 years, because hopefully you should be such a different person in 5 years that there's no possible way you could want the same things. You've grown so much, is my hope personally. So I sort of really resonate with this. So, I think her question is, just find things that you're passionate about, you care about, and, keep working towards them. And burnout's a thing. Sometimes you do lose your way, and that's an opportunity for you to pivot or to pick something else, or to, Dan says this a lot about, we all have this talent, and our job is to find it. And life is not a linear path. It's not Monopoly. It's, you don't just go do. There are twists and turns and all these sorts of things. So it's a valid concern. Just try not to burn yourself out, I would say to that, and expect that life will really change, and roll with those punches, because the opportunities it brings are enormous. If I'd followed that initial path, I wouldn't be the person I am today.
I agree with that. I think just personal experience has, you just never know where you're going to end up, and you don't know what you're gaining as you're going through it. So what I'm hearing in her voice is, there's this built-in anxiety. Is like, have I made the right choice? And so, as we've mentioned before, a lot of times systems are set up to where you feel like you got to make all these front-loaded decisions for the rest of your life.
They have to be perfect.
And in reality is, for the majority of people, that changes throughout life. It's rare the individual that I've talked to that went to university for one thing and just kind of stayed there the rest of their life.
All right.
Thoughts on that? Since you've got...
Yeah, you were an engineer, right? Now you're a doctor, so...
Yep. No, and I even went to dental school for a year.
Oh, wow.
I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. But what struck me about her statement was the phrase she used about losing your path. I don't think you're losing your path. I think you're gaining opportunities for different paths.
Right.
I think when you lose it, it may be just when you feel that you've lost your path, it may be that you've just opened your mind to new possibilities. So it's not loss, it's actually gaining.
Yeah, that's good.
And I always have felt that, and at different levels, because I've had high school students rotate with me thinking they wanted to be a brain surgeon or an orthopedic surgeon or some type of doctor. And multiple ones of them have found, hopefully not because I've been hard to deal with, but
you changed their minds.
Yes. And I definitely don't want to do this any longer. No, but it's because the way I interact with them, I hope, is that they have no obligation to me. They're just opening their eyes and trying to discover pathways. And our families of origin often have either directly or indirectly influenced us greatly on what our path should be.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of work and a lot of thinking and a lot of help to break out of whatever molds we feel or we are confined by in our early years. Or sometimes we have no guidance. And that's another one which you and I have talked about a lot. So I think it does require opening your eyes and being a sponge, being receptive to as many ideas. And that's the beauty of higher education, is it's intended to be just that, where you are exposed to a wide variety of ideas and thinking and viewpoints that then allow you to connect to various ones that then make you feel whole.
Yeah. And
the last thing I would say, at least for this, is that one of the worst things I think you can do is and this is going a step further to medical school, is to say, I want to be a invasive cardiologist. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to med school to do that. Well, you know what? Open your eyes, because I thought I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't decide until the last minute because I wasn't exposed to it about orthopedic surgery. And then I went bing, 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 bing. And then I knew this is in my DNA. This is what I do best. So it's just an example. But even the college students who are pre-med, I think that's a terrible thing to say. Right. Because then you're just gunning for as many A's as possible and the best score on the MCAT and the best medical school you can get into, and you forget to live and take other courses that are going to diversify your mind, your heart, and your soul.
I think it's a great point that you made from a standpoint of society does put a pressure on us, is whether our family and then society as our community as a whole, because they want the best for you, and so they're trying to put you down this path. But the one great thing I learned from interviewing so many entrepreneurs and this mentorship and why it's so important is that they're the ones that kind of give you permission to not follow that path. Like, this is a kind of a guided, here's a map, but you get to go pick what that looks like. And so opening your eyes to all the possibilities and not being fixated, I think it's great.
That saying, when one door closes, another door opens. The full saying is, when one door closes, another door opens, but you have to be looking for it.
Yes.
Right. Which always gets clipped off. And I think that if you're just staring at a closed door, three doors down, door swings open, you're not going to see that. And that's sort of all that kind of thinking.
Keeping that open mind. So I'd say to Kiera is not to worry about it and just kind of keep that going, keep it open.
Yeah, that is
mind open. All right. So next video we've got Dawn, and Dawn is interested in engineering.
When I was at a conference a few months ago, just kind of one thing I wanted to ask a lot of people is, like, even if they weren't mechanical engineers, how did that engineering degree help them in their field? I mean, I know I did run into some people who do have experience in AI and machine learning, things like that. Just kind of asking them, how do you see the future of AI? Because for me, I know I'm not going to be very hands-on with AI creation and machine learning elements of it, but I do know that it is going to make an impact for a lot of engineering fields and just computer science fields. So how do you feel about what you're creating, what you're working on? How is that going to change you? And are you happy with those changes?
Interesting. So he's now thinking, obviously, AI is this new thing that he's in college. He's in engineering, and he's like, okay, I'm not going to be hands-on programming it, but how does that?
Yeah, I've got this new tool.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
yeah.
Is that me to start?
I would, jump in.
All right.
Since
So
you're the rocket
How
scientist.
do I see? It's funny, actually. The first time I ever saw AI show up came out of controls theory. And I remember sitting in a conference watching this paper and thinking, this is rubbish. This will never go anywhere. And now I use it every day. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be just another tool. I think it's very nascent and it's very hard to know. It's like asking, well, what's Web 2.0 going to be? when the internet was just invented, right? Like, it's really hard to see the future. But one of the, theoretically, everything should get a little easier. Everything's going to have a little AI in it now. It's going to help you auto balance mics. It's going to help you do all these little things. I call it menial thought, right? There's menial labor, right? Which is just like labor. Henry Ford would have men carry pig iron from the train to the smelter, right, to make cars. And it was a complete waste of people's time, but it had to be done. And so there's a lot of menial thought that goes on in our day-to-day lives that hopefully we can get rid of, right, and free us up to be more creative, to do the things that are fun. And so that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm in the same place as this guy. I have no magic window to the future. I can imagine a lot of things that could happen, but man, it's really hard to know what's going to come to the front, right? GPT came out of nowhere. Like, boom, in a week, no one was talking about it. Everyone was talking about it. So, I don't have good answers there. All I can say is I think the future is bright, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think he's right to be asking these questions and looking out and asking, what are these tools? But yeah, great question.
I think it's important. I think AI is going to obviously, or what we're seeing now is it's touching pretty much every field. So when he's mentions, I don't expect to be working hands-on and creating it. That's an opportunity to well, maybe not right this second, but as things do change, right, that might be pretty important. What we're seeing, some of the fears or some of the questions that we get, as we may have shared in previous podcasts, is we're working on Founding Up, which is an AI mentorship company. And the reason that we're doing this is because we see that it's going to be an important piece to the future and how everybody's skills and reskills and that. So I think that's a important consideration. And what we've commented in the past is that those that are at least open-minded to learning about it are going to have some advantages of those that just kind of like.
But that is in fairness true about anything. Right. If you are open-minded to the tools available in front of you when new ones show up, if you, instead of being afraid of how your life could get worse, instead embrace how it can get better, it's hard to lose. I think in a world where that's how you think and that's the mentality you bring.
So go ahead. If you want to say something, I was going to ask you a question, but
go ahead.
From a perspective of medicine, you've got both the background of engineering and medicine. So from that perspective, obviously, I thought this might be a good question for you to give some 2 cents. Do you see that AI is also going to impact the medical field? Is that something that you're even thinking about?
Getting the AI brain surgeons.
Yes. So that's the specifics of the general that I was going to comment on first. I loved the way he articulated his question, which was not how is AI going to change the field? And he said specifically, how is AI going to change me? Right. And I think that's fascinating because he may be the more astute, introspective version of the populace, in Brave New World, who were subjected to soma and became a homogeneous, uniformly thinking population, accepting of all things with few deviations. And I do see as a fear component, I love technology. As an engineer, I love AI. I love all the power, the immense power of what its capabilities are. But I do think that the idea of, and this goes back to your algorithm for what you do as your mentor, we've talked about this before with Founding Up, is that if it's AI is only what information it has. And if you give it specific information, you can really help people very specifically. Right. But if it's just taking everything from the knowledge base that's accessible to computers on the planet, then that has the capacity to homogenize thought and to almost be just a sweeping, sort of generic. Not just dumbing down, but just making everything smooth and without glitches in a way and without the outliers thinking, because they're not getting that data coming in. Whereas for me, the beauty of it is when you can be specific. The power of it is to enhance that specificity. And that's what I think Founding Up is doing with the mentorship, is you're taking specific data that applies to a specific group of people and using that to help them. And I think that's critical. If you then take that into my realm of medicine, I think about this a lot as to how it can help. We've already seen the pre-AI concept of these algorithmic diagnosticians, Dr. Google and so forth, where you take 10 symptoms and put them in, it spits out 4 possible diagnoses. Well, that's all well and good, especially great for underserved populations who have no access to anything. But there is a version of it for me is if someone my age has an MRI of their shoulder done, it's going to show 10 things wrong with it. My shoulder's fine. It doesn't hurt any. It's strong. It's fine. It doesn't have any tears of note, and it's just wear and tear on it. So if you just take that MRI report and act on that, you're doing surgery, 80 cases a week because you're operating on everybody for any abnormality.
Sounds like a good business model for you.
Sure, and unfortunately, there are some people that use that model. But for me, I say I don't really care. I need the MRI or I need the nerve test or whatever to corroborate what I know clinically, what I've seen by touching you, by listening to you, you telling me you can't sleep, you can't, on your shoulder or whatever. That's what then informs the ultimate treatment. And AI can fit in there beautifully to enhance that effort, but it can't take away that human touch capability. AI cannot examine you. It can't test the subtle difference in your strength or range of motion and so forth.
Very cool. I hadn't thought about that, but not yet.
We're working on a robot arm. Don't worry. I can't talk too much about it, but
I thought that was pretty fascinating. All right, let's go on to the next one.
If you could ask anybody that you look up to, like that has the same major as you or that has a career in software engineering, a question, what would you ask them?
Maybe what I should learn outside of software engineering that would help me later in my career. Because I know a lot of skills are also like talking to your colleagues and other stuff that would also help a lot more. But maybe some other tips of those kind of things would definitely help in my career.
So I picked this question specifically because software engineer, he's thinking about what else should I be studying. And as I was thinking about you and how you shifted from engineering to all the things you've done, I thought that might be an interesting thing for you to kind of give it a perspective.
Yeah. I think when I hear these questions, I just love them because I feel maybe I'm reading too much into their questions, but for him, he wants to know what he should learn outside of the field that he's learning. And he should learn absolutely as much as possible as he can about everything outside of his field. And I remember one of the most fascinating courses I took in college was not mandatory, but I just took it as an elective because I ended up graduating. I just would keep taking courses and adding on courses. And one was anthropology, which was I just loved anthropology. And
for those of us that might not know, elaborate on what anthropology is.
Well, the study of mankind, basically. Yeah, the from the origin of the species up to our current plights in some ways about our, it deals with the aculturalization, inculturalization, the development of society, and so forth. And I remember, I would say, well, one of the things you could do is, I remember when I was in engineering and I read the 2,700-page Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Wow. And that informed me so much in everything I do still. And I think it's just fascinating, I think that obviously, I think I don't know if he was asking this specifically, but when you pigeonhole yourself into it's always a funnel of knowledge when you get highly specific and you become really good at one thing. That's great because we need people to be the very best they can be at one thing. But that very same funnel is what can narrow you as a human being. And your soul matters, your interpersonal relationships matter, your if you narrow yourself too much and you're too specific, then you don't see the little droplets of information that's floating around you, and then you can grab those and maybe invent something that changes the way people look at what your specific is. You have to pull from. It's like being in a orchard with all different kinds of fruit, and you want to take some of each and try each one and know how that applies to you or how that makes you feel, and then the sky's the limit, I think.
I know we were talking about this before the podcast, but you were talking about your kind of your thought process of what got you into engineering, and then how did that shift to a completely different. I mean, I did that same thing, went from finance to media and other things, but I'm kind of curious about what shifted for you.
Yeah,
was it that keeping the mind open and then kind of gravitating to something?
You know what? I think it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, which was, if we go way back, it was the origin of my family and the fact that my dad was an engineer at University of Houston, but he had one semester to graduate. And then his brother got sick. It was right after the Depression. And so he went into the military to support the family. And he never got his degree. Now, he had a very successful career with Exxon and did very well, which you could do in those days. But at the same time, it always seemed to me that, and maybe I was reading too much into it because I did that often, that he was always a little regretful that he didn't go back and finish that. So I think in my mind, through an empathic response, I wanted to complete that for him. Yeah. So that was one reason I went into it, because frankly, I really kind of wanted to be an English major.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I was good at math, and so it was fine. And so, but I ended up loving it for the reason that you go to a university, like University of Texas, which is massive, but that same massiveness of it also gives you so many resources to access, so much diversity of course selection. So doing that, going through engineering and actually really loving engineering, it just, I was still, open to a lot of different things and a lot of ideas. So it was, I think, the way I can't imagine a better experience than that. But why I'm so supportive of what you guys are doing, is I really didn't have any guidance. I mean, I didn't have a high school counselor that gave me guidance. My parents really didn't have the educational level of resource to be able to influence me that way. I mean, they sat me down and gave me the serious conversation, and I was a very good student, and they sat me down and said, well, we just hope you'll go to college. And I went, yeah, okay. Well, I know I'm going to college, and thank you, and I know I can afford it because University of Texas cost almost nothing at that time.
17 cents.
Yeah. So yeah, but I would love to have had mentors. And I have, as I've gone further along, I've had plenty of mentors. And so I appreciate that, and I hope I've served as one on occasion.
Sure. Yeah. The point that kind of tying back to what I saw in serving hundreds and hundreds of families in the financial planning arena, I saw this disconnect, what you're describing, where parents were skilled at one thing and they had 3 or 4 kids and they all wanted to do different things. And the answer was always go to college. And they were just not equipped to kind of help them. So I think that causes, in a way, that kind of causes that pressure, but also it's important to open the mind. So I think that was a great thing. Let's move on to our last question.
Do you ever worry about AI and if it will replace your field?
I've personally never had that thought, but so no.
Not really, because I feel like what I want to do is very people oriented, and what I have seen of AI would just help me versus hurt me in my field. But I think that's very my field specifically.
Sure.
So medical field, she didn't mention it here, we just have that background on her. And very similar, kind of what you thought as far as from medicine. There's certain things that AI will not, replaces that human touch.
I think that's something though that I think doctors really appreciate that perhaps engineers don't. Right, it's the humanity, and even engineering has humanity in it. Right, ultimately, I'm a big fan of ontological design. Right, and it's like, and you said this earlier when talking about that person who said, "How will AI change me?" The tools around us change the way you use them. If you have a hammer with the little hooks on the back so you can pull the nails out, man, you don't have to think too hard about putting nails in things. Right. But if you don't have that, oh man, measure twice, nail once, and so. That to me was this really interesting piece where being in a doctor field, there's a lot of compassion, there's a lot of empathy. AI is terrible at that, right? And throughout all of human history, always be good at the things your tools are bad at, right? That it's blacksmiths got replaced by machines that would just crush metal instantly into the shape you wanted, right? And then people went into other things. AI is bad at innovation, it's bad at empathy. Right, like you said, it can't touch you, it can't love you. Yes. Yet. They're trying, man. And so I don't know. That was kind of what I heard, right? And that to me really stood out against the backdrop of the engineers that we talked to. And I think I'd love to hear your thoughts for having done both, right? I think the engineers lose sight at the end of the day that you're building tools for people, and ultimately this is about people. AI is just a tool. It's just a hammer. Yeah. Right. And a very complicated hammer, it's just a hammer. Right. You can use a hammer to build or to destroy. Like, what are you doing? What's the job? Who's the person at the end of this? And so I don't know. That was kind of. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, that's a very intelligent way of putting it, and I love the way you discussed it. I think that you are absolutely correct in that there are components of delivering health care to people that are obviously very nuanced and based on the empathic response to people and then founded on medical knowledge. And the medical knowledge is easy for AI to assess, but not the application of that medical knowledge. And to even to the point of everybody I've ever met is pretty much, unless they are a little psychologically off, are scared of having surgery. Right. Now, I wasn't scared of it because that's what I do every day, but I'm putting that aside. I'm saying most people should be. And I tell everybody I'm operating on, they're nervous when I go in to see them. And they say, I'm a little nervous. And I say, well, you should be. That means you're psychologically healthy, but you're going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. This is going to go very well and straightforward. And so I don't think AI will ever have the capacity to do that kind of nuance. Right. But what's interesting about her, and I have a little more information being, again, having been in practice and watched the evolution or maybe devolution in certain ways of medicine, and that is that I would say the biggest right now endangerment to the medical profession is not AI. That's going to enhance it. And if done the right way, it's going to be beautiful, right? The biggest endangerment is actually economics and money, because it's obviously one of the massive industrial complexes. And there's so much money pouring into it. I'm lucky. I've worked very hard to have a rarefied practice. And obviously I was in the trenches, 100 years ago, delivering care. Yeah. But so I don't have to worry about it. No one can buy me out. Right. I just deliver and people keep coming. Right. But many of my younger colleagues have felt compelled to be bought out by a big private equity consortium. Right. And they are then being told, well, you used to see 25 patients today, now you're going to see 50. Well, that's where medicine is lost. Right. That will sour the patients. It will not provide quality care, and it will sour the physicians who are engaged in it. It takes the humanity out of it, to your point. So I think that's a much bigger right. And then it might as well be your doctor might as well be a computer sitting there, because you're not going to get anything different. Right. So that's the conundrum we're in. I have one daughter that's planning on going to medical school, and
haven't talked her out of it yet.
I haven't talked her out of it yet. And I'll tell you why. I took her with me out to the Navajo reservation, where I've gone for 14 years and just done a week of surgery. And, I see patients in the clinic, then do some surgery. she came with me, stood side by side with me, and obviously there are beautiful people at baseline, but the humanity of them and the way, the dignity and grace with which they handle their medical problems. And she just stood there as a passive witness. I mean, she was interacting, but she's not a doctor. And she got so excited about medical school after just being there. I mean, she was already into it. But that just kindled a whole nother level for her. And that's what you can't possibly get through anything else than human interaction and empathy and grace.
I heard a couple things in her comment, and I'm glad, and you pretty much answered it in your answers. One of the things I'm most excited about in the medical field, and you can correct me if you're seeing this or not, I had the opportunity to interview some scientists out of Austria a few years ago, and at that point they were working on on big data. They were putting like all the medical data for everyone in Austria for the last 10 years into AI, and from that, able to learn based on historical, medicines interacting with each other and age of people, all that kind of stuff. So he was excited about the ability that data would help produce medicine quicker. You'd have the data to see what he was excited about, the data being able to make medicine faster and more effective, and less expensive to produce. And that's what I took away from that. And so hearing you say about some of these private equity firms and trying to maximize this return, what I'm hopeful for is that some of that technology goes in and is able to take care of some of the things that they're trying to make more efficient and brings more time. Because what I'm finding for just a business owner, AI is giving us more time. It is.
Yeah, man, things are so much quicker than they used to be.
Yep.
There are some things that, we do today, me and you, Dan, and I'm like, this would have taken me hours.
Yeah.
And you're like, I did it in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And that's great because it wasn't particularly creative work, but it just had to happen.
Well, to put it in perspective, I am so old that when I was in residency at Tulane, and we gave talks all the time, a resident talk, I would take a camera, set up on a tripod over a lit light box, put x-rays on it, take pictures of that, take the roll of film, walk it across to the radiology department, connect it to a piece of radiographic paper, put it through the machine, have it developed. Then I would cut the individual frames out of those slides, mount them myself into my slides, and put them in the slide projector. And that was my talk.
For anyone listening who wonders what radiographic paper is, that would be film. Although many of our Gen Z listeners will probably have never seen film.
Right.
And now I can, I haven't yet done it, but I want to. I just haven't had an excuse to. But now, obviously, PowerPoint and other software programs make it so beautiful and easy with fading and coming in and out and all sorts of graphics and videos embedded and so forth. But now AI can generate your talk for yourself by itself.
Right.
And I can't wait to try to see how I can meld that and make it even more enhanced. But
yeah, we work with that all the time. It's amazing that they're just updating every single week. There's something new that we're.
My favorite feature, as someone who often struggles to organize my thoughts, is just to brain dump into the AI everything I want, just like word vomit into it, and then be like, arrange this, and it does.
Wow,
there you go, there's your outline. And just off of like 5 minutes of stream of consciousness.
And then you're like, I sound so smart.
I know. It literally used to take me hours to get to that point.
I want to try that. That's a great idea. That's great, because I tend to overthink by organizing, because I know it's going to have to be organized. So, and to let it go free form.
Yeah, just like word vomit into the thing.
And it does impress you when it comes back. You're like,
yeah.
And you might have to tweak it a little bit more, but it's very fast. It saves you tons
of time. Our listeners.
That's all the time we have for today. It's been a pleasure. I'd love to have you back sometime. This was very informative.
I loved it. I love the thinking. I love the whole idea behind it. And I'm just honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Uncharted, your Sidekick for Life podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Dr. Alton Barron and found his insights as inspiring as we did. If you got anything out of this podcast, please share it with your friends or family. Word of mouth goes a long way. And who knows, you may be the reason a Gen Zer feels heard. Embracing mentorship and keeping an open mind to the myriad paths life offers are key takeaways from today's show. To our Gen Z contributors, Kiera, Don, Drew, Gabby, and Juju, thank you for helping us mold our podcast around your voices. If you are a Gen Zer and have questions, thoughts, or topics you would like us to explore, we would love to hear from you. You can reach us at foundingup.com/uncharted_podcast. Or connect with us on our socials. We're on Instagram at foundingup and TikTok at founding_up. All our links are also in the description of the episode. Please take a minute to subscribe, follow, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, keep exploring the uncharted and know we're always here to show you the value of mentorship.